He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. On the drive home, the silence between us was deafening. Then he reached into the glove compartment and handed me a stack of papers. I unfolded them, and my heart stopped. Divorce papers. "What is this?" I stammered, my hands trembling. Panic set in. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Did he know? How could he know? Before I could speak, he pulled out his phone and played a video. My stomach dropped. The video showed me kissing Vincent at the bar. It was grainy, but unmistakable. My face flushed with shame as I realized the truth. My friends had recorded me and sent the video to William. The very people I had trusted, who had cheered me on, had betrayed me. "I gave you a chance to tell me the truth," William said, his voice tight with emotion. "But you lied, over and over again. I can't do this anymore." His words cut deeper than I thought possible. My chest ached as I tried to plead with him, but he was unmoved. "I'm not cruel," he said firmly. "You have 10 minutes to gather your things and leave. I've already contacted your brother to help you move out. And just so you know, I've sent the video to your parents and siblings. They deserve to know who you really are." His words felt like daggers, each one slicing through me. I begged him to reconsider, tears streaming down my face, but he was resolute. "You made your choice," he said. "Now you have to live with the consequences." When we got home, he didn't even look at me. "Your time starts now," he said coldly, before walking inside and shutting the door. I packed my belongings in a daze, my hands shaking as I placed them on the porch. My phone buzzed with messages from my family, expressions of shock, anger, and disappointment. My brother arrived shortly after, his face a mix of frustration and pity. He helped me load my things into his car while I tried to hold back my sobs. Living with my parents was a new kind of torture. They were supportive in their own way, but their disappointment was palpable. My mother, ever the pragmatist, told me to focus on winning William back. "You made a mistake," she said, "but everyone deserves a second chance." My siblings were less forgiving. They reminded me constantly of the pain I had caused, not just to William, but to our family as well. At work, the situation was no better. My so-called friends had spread the story, and I became the subject of whispers and judgmental stares. The humiliation was unbearable. After a week of enduring their mockery, I quit my job, reporting the harassment to HR on my way out. My boss, surprisingly understanding, let me leave without serving the usual 2-week notice. Jobless and emotionally drained, I retreated into myself. I avoided social media, ignored calls from friends, and spent my days searching for remote work. The walls of my childhood bedroom felt like a prison, a constant reminder of how far I had fallen. Then, one day, my mother-in-law reached out. Her voice was kind, but tinged with disappointment. She listened as I explained myself, though I couldn't bring myself to tell her the full truth. She promised to talk to William on my behalf, giving me a sliver of hope. Weeks later, my parents and I went to see William. My mother-in-law couldn't join, but she assured me she had spoken to him. When we arrived, he let us in, but kept his distance. He offered us drinks, his politeness only emphasizing the chasm between us. "I've made my decision," he said firmly. "Forgiveness isn't the issue, it's trust. And trust, once broken, can't be rebuilt." I broke down, pleading with him to reconsider, but he remained steadfast. "You weren't drunk enough to forget what you were doing," he said, "and you should have noticed your friends recording you. That's on you, not them." His words were a painful truth I couldn't argue with. As we left, he handed me the divorce papers, his expression one of finality. Back home, I signed them, knowing there was no point in delaying the inevitable. Delivering the papers to William was the hardest thing I've ever done. He seemed surprised, but relieved. "Thank you," he said simply before closing the door. Now I wait for the court date, living with the consequences of my actions. My brother, a lawyer, explained that William's terms were fair and there was little to contest. I've learned a hard lesson, one I will carry with me forever. My story is a cautionary tale. Don't take your loved ones for granted. Cherish the people who love you and the life you've built together, because once it's gone, no amount of regret can bring it back. He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. The tension in the car was thick, suffocating even. I stole a glance at him, trying to decipher the emotion behind his eyes, but there was nothing there, just an empty stare fixed on the road ahead. I swallowed hard, wishing he would say something, anything, to break the silence. But he didn't. The seconds stretched into minutes, and my heartbeat echoed in my ears, each thud a reminder of the weight of the moment. The world outside the window blurred, but the heaviness inside the car only grew. I couldn't tell if it was the anxiety swirling inside me or the quiet intensity of the situation, but I felt like I was suffocating. And then, as if he had been waiting for the right moment, he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "Here," he said, his voice cold. His hand trembled just slightly as he handed them to me. I took the papers with trembling hands, my fingers numb as I unfolded them. The words on the top of the page made my stomach drop. Divorce papers. I couldn't breathe. My vision swam, and for a moment, the world around me disappeared as my heart seemed to implode. My hands shook uncontrollably as I turned the paper over, desperately trying to make sense of what I was seeing. But there was no misunderstanding it. Divorce papers. My chest tightened, and my throat constricted as I stammered, "What is this?" I looked up at him, my mind racing. How did he know? How could he know? The guilt weighed down on me, but I couldn't form a coherent thought. I tried to speak, but the words got caught in my throat. Panic surged through me, each second stretching into eternity. Before I could find the words to plead, he pulled out his phone and held it up, pressing play. My stomach sank as the video began to play. I recognized the bar immediately, the dim lighting, the familiar faces in the background. But what chilled me to the core was the image on the screen, me kissing Vincent. My face burned with shame as I watched myself, as though the grainy video was some kind of twisted reminder of the betrayal. I couldn't look away. The video was clear enough, even if it wasn't perfect quality. But the worst part? It wasn't just the kiss. It was the realization that my friends, the people I trusted, the ones who had cheered me on in my marriage, had been recording me. They had sent the video to William. The very people who should have had my back had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I gave you a chance to tell me the truth. William's voice cut through the silence, his words ice cold. But you lied. Over and over again. I can't do this anymore. His voice was tight with emotion, but his resolve was even stronger. Each word felt like a hammer, crushing the pieces of my heart. The betrayal, the lies, the broken trust, it was all too much to bear. My chest ached with the weight of the truth. I tried to plead, to beg him for understanding, but his expression didn't soften. I'm not cruel, he continued, his voice steady but firm. You have 10 minutes to gather your things and leave. I've already contacted your brother to help you move out. And just so you know, he paused, pulling the phone from his pocket once more, I've sent the video to your parents and siblings. They deserve to know who you really are. His words hit me like a slap to the face, each one sharp and unforgiving. The tears came without warning, streaming down my face, but he didn't flinch. His gaze remained cold and unwavering. I begged him to reconsider, to find it in himself to forgive me. But he was resolute, unmoved by my pleas. You made your choice, he said. Now you have to live with the consequences. The car came to a stop in front of our house, but it felt like I was already miles away from him, from everything I knew. He didn't even look at me as he got out and walked toward the door, leaving me behind in the car, shaking with disbelief. When I finally made my way inside, he didn't greet me. He didn't even acknowledge my presence. Your time starts now, he said, his tone clipped, before turning his back on me and walking into the house. The door slammed shut behind him with a finality that reverberated through my entire being. I gathered my things in a daze, my mind still reeling from the video, from the words he had said. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I packed up the remnants of a life I had destroyed. As I stepped onto the porch, the weight of the situation hit me all over again. My phone buzzed with messages from my family, shock, anger, betrayal in every word. I could barely look at them. I felt exposed, stripped of any defense I had left. My brother arrived soon after, his face a mixture of frustration and pity. He didn't say much, but his presence was a silent accusation. He helped me load my things into his car, his movements mechanical. I tried to hold back my tears, but they came anyway, hot and uncontrollable. Living with my parents was its own brand of torture. They were supportive in their own way, but the weight of their disappointment hung in the air like a cloud. My mother, ever the pragmatist, told me to focus on winning William back. You made a mistake, she said. But everyone deserves a second chance. But my siblings? They weren't so forgiving. Every word they spoke reminded me of the pain I had caused, not just to William, but to our family as well. The guilt gnawed at me every waking moment. I couldn't escape it. At work, the situation was no better. My so-called friends had turned their backs on me, spreading the story, letting their whispers fill the air around me. It didn't take long before the judgmental stares and hushed conversations made it unbearable. The humiliation was all-consuming. After a week of being ostracized, I couldn't take it anymore. I quit my job, reporting the harassment to HR as I left. My boss, surprisingly understanding, let me walk away without any further obligations. Jobless and emotionally drained, I retreated into myself. I shut myself off from the world, ignoring calls, avoiding social media, spending each day searching for remote work. My childhood bedroom, once a place of comfort, now felt like a prison. The walls seemed to close in on me with each passing day, a constant reminder of how far I had fallen. Then, one day, a glimmer of hope appeared. My mother-in-law reached out, her voice kind but filled with a sadness I hadn't heard before. She listened as I tried to explain, though I couldn't bring myself to tell her everything. She promised to talk to William, to intercede on my behalf. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to hope just a little. Weeks later, my parents and I went to see William. My mother-in-law couldn't come, but she assured me that she had spoken to him. When we arrived, I saw him standing in the doorway, his face unreadable. He let us in, but kept his distance, offering drinks as though nothing had changed. But the polite gestures only served to highlight the distance between us. "I've made my decision," he said firmly, his tone unwavering. "Forgiveness isn't the issue. It's trust. And trust, once broken, can't be rebuilt." His words were like a punch to the gut, and I couldn't stop the sobs that racked my body. I pleaded with him, begged him to reconsider, but he didn't waver. "You weren't drunk enough to forget what you were doing," he said quietly. "And you should have noticed your friends recording you. That's on you, not them." There was no arguing with him. The truth was there, in the video, in my actions, and I couldn't escape it. As we left, he handed me the divorce papers one last time, his expression one of finality. I took them, knowing deep down that there was no point in delaying the inevitable. Back home, I signed the papers. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but it was also the only thing left to do. Delivering them to William was an act of finality. When I handed him the papers, he seemed surprised, but there was also a sense of relief in his eyes. "Thank you," he said simply before closing the door in my face. Now I wait for the court date. My brother, a lawyer, explained that William's terms were fair and that there was little to contest. And though I can't change what happened, I've learned a hard lesson, one that will stay with me for the rest of my life. This is my story, a cautionary tale of betrayal and lost trust. It serves as a reminder to never take those who love you for granted, to cherish the life you have and the people who stand by you. Because once it's gone, no amount of regret can bring it back.